On today's episode, as we dive in too deep with myself and Neal Driscoll, we will discuss training camp. Day 2 of practice has concluded. Tua decides to sit out. Did Austin Jackson give away management's plan that they are telling and mandating players to not discuss Tua's deal? We will talk about all of that, plus Anthony Weaver and his defense continue a strong showing against the offense led by the backup quarterbacks. We got tons to talk about. Do us the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and as always, let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, that open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
All right, huddle up, huddle up.
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw, blitz coming, and get to him. No, he takes off running, and he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one as training camp is well underway, and we got a lot to talk about as things are starting to get interesting in Miami, as it seems it's no more Mr. Nice Guy from Tua Tagovailoa. You know, before camp opened up, I warned everyone, hey, look at what Jordan Love's doing. They're represented by the same people. And I was kind of thrown aback that he even handed the ball off twice in 11-11s. You had showed them enough in OTAs, and they must be listening to the show, because I've been saying, hey, you got to give them a dose of what life is like with Skylar Thompson and Mike White. And I can guarantee you in a couple weeks, Mike McDaniel's going to storm into that Chris Greer's office, and he's going to say, what the hell are you doing? You brought me over here to get this guy right. I made him the league lead. I helped make him the league leader in passing yards. He's been in the MVP conversation for 2 years under me. Let's go pay the man, because I've got expectations on my shoulders. It's not just Tua and Tyreek. Mike McDaniel knows what's at stake. So, Neal, we're 2 days into training camp officially after they reported. Man, it's we're gonna talk a lot about this what went on today, but your feelings as we go into day 2 of Tua Tagovailoa's hold-in, as he limits his participation even further after only doing 7-7s and taking 2 snaps during just to hand the ball off in 11-11s. Today, he decides to fully sit out of practice. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, 2 quick housekeeping things before I do that. I will start. I got a lot of people asking why I won't be on camera, why I'm not on camera. In between some training for work, I will be back on camera very, very soon. And reason I still think to this day, when I listen to that intro, your let's go and your live game reaction to that Ravens game is the number one moment in Dolphin YouTube history. Like I remember watching that in my car because I was in traffic, leaving the stadium that day. And I was literally like almost crashing with my son and my my nephew in the car because I was laughing so hard because
That's the one Diane Tagovailoa, she posted on Instagram. She posted it on her Instagram stories.
oh man, it's still one of my favorite Dolphin wins of all time. See, I
It
call
is.
it's like the Tua landmark game for me. But yeah, man,
But Neal, hold on before you go on. See, that's another example. The Arizona game, that game, we can name a few others. Tua can do it. He can win big games. He can win in big moments. He just needs to do it more consistently. And I think that just comes down to reps. And at Alabama, how many second halves were they involved in? How many close fourth quarters were they involved in? You know, he was really good in the second half of the LSU game when they involved Najee. You know, if Jerry Jeudy doesn't drop the football, they win their game. Tua can win in big moments. Tua can win in big games. He can win in crunch time. The problem is he does it 25 to 33% right now. We need it to be at like 50, 60, but I digress just because every time that Ravens game comes up, it's one of the most impressive performances since Dan Marino was rocking our jersey. You know what I mean?
It's on par with almost any Marino performance ever.
Yeah.
Like ever. Like,
and remember the Arizona game when Kyler didn't even want to shake his hand because he was so pissed off?
Oh, when he shook Buda Baker in the open field, man, that was like, I was insufferable to my buddy who was a Ravens fan watching the game with me. He literally left at halftime because I was just too much, man. But no, man, like we're gonna answer a lot of questions here in the next couple weeks before this deal gets done. And not only are the Dolphin fans and Dolphin faithful, but the NFL is going to realize just how important Tua Tagovailoa is to the Dolphins and just how good of a quarterback he is. And, you know, I posted something today, man, like you want your quarterbacks to do multiple things. Win at home. He has a 22-6 record, right? You want them to win in the division. He's 12-6 in the division. When you're winning twice as much in your division and you have a record of 22-6 at home, you're doing a lot of things right. That's how you get in the dance. And we talked about this ad nauseum. They didn't win in the playoffs last year. They lost to Pat Mahomes. I'm not going to give context or excuses. It is what it is. A lot of people lose to that guy. He's good. And it's not just Pat Mahomes. It's Andy Reid. It's Steve Spagnuolo. And that's the bar. And for me, it kind of sucks that Tua's not practicing, but the Dolphins should have paid this man by now, man. I'm on Team Tua. If I have to pick a side in this debate, he's your starting quarterback. And, do you really need to see Mike White in 11-11? Like, no, like, you know what I mean? I don't want to see that. And, I think
I had a pretty animated conversation about this today, Neal, with EM Dolphin fan around lunchtime. Yep. This is what I'm getting pissed off at about. As we start to learn more about this situation, more and more between the Barry Jackson tweets, between what we hear privately, basically this is how you can sum it up. They were probably in the $45-50 million range when they started these negotiations off. Then the salary cap rose, Goff got his money, and Trevor Lawrence got his money. I think they were fine with the $140 to $150 million guaranteed money as well. The problem that's happened is with the Goff raise and the cap raise is I've been told privately Tua wants between $170 million to $200 million guaranteed. He wants to fall in between Goff and Burrow in terms of guaranteed money. Then you look at the annual average. I just said, I believe they were probably in the 45 to 50 million range when this started up. Now that's at the 55 million range, right?
Right.
The thing is the API has gone up around 10 million, right? If you're at the 45 million range, and the guaranteed money, if you're at 140 to 150, okay, let's put you at 145 just to call it even. At minimum, they want you to come up 25 million on the guaranteed money, and it's probably somewhere closer to 30 to 40 million in terms of 175 to 185. And the problem, and what's pissing me off, Neal, is I got the Packers GM coming out, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and remember he came out and said that they totally expected the market to go this way? Remember that he said, you got other teams that projected the market to go this way, and they're paying their guys because they realize, hey, this is the way the market's going, but in 2 years, these guys are going to be the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, as Mahomes is going to want to rework his money because of the market. Burrow and Herbert, if they perform, they're going to look at some of these guys getting money and they're going to want to rework their money, et cetera, et cetera. So and then you got the new contracts that'll come in, Love, Dak, et cetera. So this is my issue here. This is where we're getting to, and this is what I have always told these people. Never underestimate the power Brandon Shore has in that building. I've said that consistently. Next to Stephen Ross, Brandon Shore and Tom Garfinkel are pretty much the most powerful people in the building, okay? And then here's the issue. We know how big of a stickler these guys are. When we start getting into they got to come up 10 million on the API, when we start getting into you got to come up 20, 25, 30 million on the guaranteed money, we know how these guys operate. They're going to stick around their number and they're going to hope this guy folds. And then that's basically, let's hope for the best. And that's just not how you do, that's
especially
just not how you do negotiations. Yes, and we've been waiting for this for 25 years, and you're acting like these guys get grow off of trees. And any Dolphin fan should know they don't grow on trees. This was our first Pro Bowl quarterback since 1995. See, this is where I'm starting to get irritated, where they did not properly project the market. It has now bit them in the ass because what have I talked about? Shore and Ross like to set their budget out for 2 years down the road, 2-3 years down the road. I'm telling you right now, they were not accounting for having to pay Tua $55 million and $170+ million guaranteed. And I don't know if, okay, let's say he wants 170 and that of 150. Can we say with confidence that they can meet halfway at 160? Or is Tua going to feel like they're sliding him still a little bit? See, and I don't think they were, I think they were not totally projecting this. The guaranteed money and the API, because of the salary cap rise and how the market has gone, has totally thrown them back. And instead of being one of these teams that's like, hey, man, you know what? Take care of a guy. He's done what he's asked. In 2 years, this deal won't even be top 10. Maybe it might be on the cusp of top 10 at best. They're living too much for the moment right now. And it's like, bro, no, you have to pay this man. I know we've been in, quarterback purgatory for 25 years, but this is what happens when you have a quarterback. You got to fucking pony up the bag. That's just the fact of the matter. And when you look at Tua's stats over the last 2 years, here's the reality of the situation. Number 4 in passing yards, okay, over the last 2 years. All right. Number 2 in passer rating. Only Brock Purdy is better. All right. Top 5 in passing touchdowns over the last 2 years. All right. Number 4 in yards per game over the last 2 years. I mean, and he's got one of the best. You can say, well, he wins it. You can cherry pick who he wins or loses against all you want, but he's got a top 10 winning percentage at the position as well. So what are we doing here?
And I'm with you, and I'm actually exactly where you are, where I'm frustrated. I'm an avid front office supporter over the last couple of years.
So am I.
And they're pushing me against a real life example. Last Friday, I get off of work. I need to get gas in my car. I say, screw it. I'm not going to get gas in my car. I wait till Monday. Well, it's 36 cents more per gallon in those 3 days. I still had to get gas, right? I still had to go to work, right? So I had to pay 36 cents more per gallon. I drug my feet. It's on me. I have to pay the difference. And it's the same exact thing what the Dolphins are doing. They should have paid Tua a year ago because they had faith in him and they saw the trajectory he was on. They didn't. They played this game. They weren't prepared for the market. And now they're staring down the barrel of botching this complete rebuild because where the Dolphins are right now, they have no leverage. They have no leverage over Tua. Tua's, like you just articulated, is a top 5 statistical quarterback in football, and he wins. So that tells me he's on the verge or on the cusp of being a top 5 quarterback in football, right? With that, you can't play these games. Like Jordan Love is literally a 1-year wonder, and I say that with all due respect, but the Packers are willing to go about and pay him. Trevor Lawrence has disappointed Jacksonville fans. The one Jacksonville fan that I know tells me all the time he'd rather have Gardner Minshew over Trevor Lawrence. right? And I think that's crazy, but like that's to the extent that he's disappointed that fan base. They still ponied up and paid him. Jared Goff was kicked to the curb by another franchise. The Lions ponied up and paid him. We're talking about lesser players at the position getting their money. And in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about the difference being cutting Jason Sanders and restructuring Jordan Brooks next year. That's all we're talking about in terms of cap dollars. Like, go make this deal. Stop being cute. This isn't Javon Holland. This isn't Christian Wilkins. It's already a distraction. You can't see any coverage of the Dolphins without hearing about what Tua's doing. And this is a make or break season for a lot of people in that organization, because I do think if Chris Greer and the Dolphins don't win a playoffs, that Chris Greer should be on the chopping block. And I like him, and I like the roster construction.
If you don't win a playoff game and you don't get your quarterback locked up, I don't know, bro.
They're flirting with disaster, man. They're flirting with disaster, and a season that has
Can
a lot
I put
of
this
promise.
in perspective for you? Check this out, Neal. Over the last 2 years, only Josh Allen, Jared Goff, and Patrick Mahomes have more passing yards than him. Okay? Over the last 2 years, only Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, and Geno Smith have higher completion percentages than him. He's number 5. Okay? Over the last 2 years, only Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes have averaged more yards per game than him. Okay? Over the last 2 years, only Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes have more passing touchdowns than him. Over the last 2 years, only Brock Purdy has a higher quarterback rating than him. What are we doing here?
If you could turn injuries off, there's only 3 quarterbacks in the league that I would take over Tua, and that's Allen, Burrow, and Mahomes in no order. And if you have injuries on, there's probably only 6 quarterbacks that I would take over Tua. So he's 7th or 8th in my top 10 rankings out of 32 starting quarterbacks. But that's it. In perspective, there's no one in next year's draft class. I just have to keep
Carson Beck.
Yeah,
Carson you got to trade up for Carson Beck.
And he didn't even make my top 20 prospects heading into the season. And I think his footwork's awful. I'm
not a fan of this class either.
He's the best of the bunch, but the bunch isn't great, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens here? We play a charade and then we go and pay like money to a guy like Dak Prescott. Is that what we want to do? Like, that would be a disaster. Like, that would be an utter disaster.
Because he looks the part, but you want to call Tua a loser? The guy's a bigger loser than Tua. If Tua was in the NFC, Neal, do you realize what he would do in the NFC?
Well, and I'll be honest, I'll take this a step further.
Name your top 10 quarterbacks right now, and I guarantee 7 or 8 of them are in the AFC, and Tua's got to get through them.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I can't even tell you my first
quarterback. He'd only have to get through 2 or 3 of your quarterbacks in your top 10 to 12 probably to get to the championship. And you put him on San Fran, the Rams, or Dallas with CD, watch him go to the playoffs and win games. And then they'll be like, oh...
And that's a great point, because I think the biggest lie I hear in this scenario is that, oh, well, the Dolphins do have leverage because not a lot of teams would want Tua. Like, this isn't 3 years ago. This is a different conversation than when we were talking to Deshaun Watson. Like, you just named the Dallas Cowboys. You don't think the Dallas Cowboys would get rid of Dak to have Tua as their starter right now? Because I do, right? Like, you don't think the Raiders would go after Tua now? Because I do.
Because Wilkins would put in word for him too.
How about Tampa Bay? How about Carolina? How about New Orleans? New Orleans, they got to see Drew Brees firsthand. He'd be, I just think that it's crazy to think when there's a supply and demand situation in the quarterback position there is, that people legitimately think that like Tua's only option is Miami, right? Like that's crazy thinking to me, because this guy over the last 2 years, and you just covered his stats, but he's led his team to the playoffs. He's helped as much as Mike McDaniel's helped him. He's also covered a lot of mistakes that Mike McDaniel's made. He's also protected an offensive line that barely protects him because of how fast he gets rid of the freaking football. This Dolphins offensive line without Tua, the reason the defense is dominating practice is because Mike White doesn't get rid of the ball like Tua. That's why Chop Robinson's getting sacks left and right at training camp. Like, because Tua gets rid of that ball, he has rhythm. He knows, he knows what he's doing back there. Like, he masks a lot of problems and deficiencies with this Dolphins team that we don't want to have real conversations with. Like, our interior offensive line right now is garbage. We get by with it because Tua gets rid of the ball so quickly. He throws with anticipation. He knows how to get the ball out quick in space. Like we survive a lot of things that we wouldn't with other quarterbacks, because we've seen Tua thrive with an offensive line that saddled certain players like Jacoby Brissett, right? Jacoby Brissett leaves Miami, looks like a totally different quarterback, right? Where he has decent offensive line play in front of him. Yet here, he was an utter disaster that couldn't win us a damn game. Same offensive line as Tua, but Tua, puts up top five, statistical numbers with that same offensive line. So, yeah, I'm at a point where I'm frustrated. I think this story,
that's the thing, right? Dak can throw 30+ touchdowns because he's got 4 or 5 seconds behind that offensive line. You give Tua that offensive line, watch this kid go to work.
Well, and it's all the same agent between Love, Dak, and Tua. The one denominator that's totally different is look how the team's responding to Tua not getting paid versus the rest of the team.
Well, and you know what's going to happen? Here's what's going to happen. They're going to come up a little. If they don't get something done during camp, they'll come up a little during the lull between camp and the regular season starting. And then Tua will start balling out for the first 8 or 9 weeks. They'll circle back around, make a better offer. But Tua and Athletes First, if he's balling out, are going to turn around and say, no, we're going to let the season play out, because they know very well if he finishes the MVP race he's been in the last 2 years, never mind 55, you're now talking about 65.
Yeah, and I'll never give up being a Dolphins fan. It's just like part of it's like eating and breathing to me at this point.
Yeah,
but
of course.
But if they botch this, it'll be the most disappointed I've ever been in the Miami Dolphins. Without
July 25th, did you think we'd be sitting here discussing this?
It was my worst fear. I think it was my worst fear,
because it's escalating now.
And I don't think, we kind of quickly talked about this before, but I don't think there's light at the end of the tunnel just yet. Like I don't think this is imminent. I've heard there's still a considerable difference in the negotiation, so I think this is going to linger. And
it's about the guarantee and the structure.
Yeah, and I there's just too much riding on the season. You had all off season to discuss this and tackle this, and to let it get to the to this 11th hour like we have done before the eve of training
but this is what they do. Me and you were reporting Christian Wilkins won. Remember when me and you were reporting last offseason, $22 million? He won around $22 million.
Right.
They came to him around October, November with a $22 million offer. And Athletes First told Wilkins, no, we're not accepting it. We will wait till the offseason. The market will go up. We'll get you more money. They ended up being right. Instead of coming, and what was I screaming all last offseason, Neal? If you're not going to sign Wilkins, pivot and get Robert Hunt done for 10 to 12 million right now, because you can. Well, they came to him around the same time they came to Wilkins. They offered him around $12 million, and they said, no, we're going to let the season play out, and he got $20 million. See, that's the problem. They wait till not even the 11th hour. They wait till 11:59, and then they make their offer, and it's too late. When these guys are 6, 7, 8 games deep into the season, and they're having a good season, you think they're going to re-up or let that shit play out?
That, and I think we're also staring down the barrel of a chain of events that could be disastrous, where our best player, Tyreek Hill's in the microphone saying, the money will work itself out. He's told his agent not to trade him, all that stuff. What happens if we start losing? Or what happens if Tua plays even harder ball with the Dolphins, and is willing to miss a game or something like that? Like, what happens? Like, a lot, it just has so much ramifications. It's a huge cloud over this team, a talented team with a lot to prove. And for me personally, I'm puzzled because the cost is what it is. They can't go back to the future in the DeLorean and pay Tua 3 months ago anymore. The current market value has changed. They played that game on a commodity, which is the quarterback position in the NFL. Every day that passes, the price is going to go up. And I don't know if it's Brandon Shore, Chris Greer, it's probably a collection of all of them, but they have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, if we are willing to play this game, what happens if we don't have this guy? What is our plan? Because I don't think they have one. They won't be in a draft position ever, with the talent they have to even get a guy that I don't think is even close to as good as Tua and Carson Beck or Shedeur Sanders, but they don't have an option. They don't have a game here. Like, I don't know what they're doing. I think it's been very poorly done. And, if this continues, Javon Holland won't be a Dolphin. You're going to see him leave this team because I just see him as a guy that's not going to deal with the charade that Miami's doing. And, hey, the Dolphins are nothing without a starting quarterback. We've seen that for 20 plus years. So I was hoping for resolution. Now we've missed that first date that you and I have talked about on the show,
Yeah.
for weeks now. So now does this get done by week 1?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I would have said, I think I said 80% yes to that a month ago.
Mhm.
I think it's a coin flip at this point. I really do.
Yeah.
But I do think Tua sitting out puts a lot of pressure on the Dolphins. So
All right, let's
the
get
ball's
into
in their
this.
court.
We got a
Yep.
lot to go over here. My team keeps letting me down. So who hasn't shown up in big moments? The play callers on offense and defense. Genius head coach and great. You're 110% right. Mike McDaniel's game plan in Kansas City was downright awful. And I'll give you another one who hasn't shown up in big moments. Where's Tyreek Hill been in big moments? Dropping the football. That's where he's been in big moments. It's multiple people. The people who only understand football to a certain level, they can only criticize the quarterback because they don't know the nuances of the game. And I see people in the chat, Shedeur Sanders. Brother, I don't know
I
about you,
wouldn't
but
take him in the second round.
I got 5 quarterbacks minimum ahead of Shedeur Sanders. I got Carson Beck, Riley Leonard, Connor Wigman, Quinn Ewers, and Garrett Green all above Shedeur Sanders. And if Drew Aller has a good year, or Jackson Dart or Cam Ward, I might put those guys ahead of Shedeur Sanders. That's real talk right now. So, yeah, I don't know about that, man. So, and you saw Shedeur Sanders against good teams in college. He just wasn't cutting it, man. So Tua would light up good teams in college. This guy can't cut it in college. So I don't see.
Yeah, I want to do that. I am
Yeah.
confident when I say this, and there's a long time and a lot can change. There is not a quarterback in the next couple drafts that is a direct replacement for Tua Tagovailoa. There's not.
Yeah,
it's not coming.
I agree. All right, let's get into this. We got a lot to go over. First thing we're going to start off with just some housekeeping here for us, Neal. And this is Emmanuel Ogbah. The numbers came out. 1 year, $5 million deal, $750,000 signing bonus. $2 million of that is fully guaranteed to $29,411 per game. Active roster bonus up to $500,000 plus incentives for Emmanuel Ogbah, who was already making an impact yesterday, had another impactful today in the orange jersey. Listen, love the addition of Emmanuel Ogbah, and we saw him have back-to-back 9-sack seasons in Flores. When you look at the roots of his defense from Rex Ryan, same thing we're dealing with here with Anthony Weaver. Emmanuel Ogbah, he's going to get even better as he gets into game shape. The opportunities are going to be there. Your thoughts on? We haven't had your thoughts on the Emmanuel Ogbah signing yet. So, what are your thoughts on Ogbah coming back?
Yeah, look, I think Ogbah's always been a good player for the Dolphins. It was a bad contract, right? Like I think when we ended up parting ways with him, we were looking at being 50+ million over the cap, and I think his move saved us like 14 million. He was a highly productive player for the Dolphins for multiple years. There was times when he was among the better players on the defense. And like a Cam Smith, he's just one of those guys that didn't fit into Vic Fangio's vision. Now, what I like about the Ogbah signing more than most is I think he helps our run defense. And,
Okay.
I think that's something, we know he gets his hand on the ball. He got 5.5 sacks in limited time. Like, we got to remember what his role is here. His role is to probably start or be a big-time contributor 4 to 5 weeks of the NFL season and then become a rotational guy, right? Like and if Chop Robinson does emerge and Jalen Phillips' health is better than anticipated, I mean, this guy could just be fighting for snaps with Mo Camara, right? Like follow the money. The contract's $2 million on the cap, right? So for me, at this time of year, now, I might have doubled down and signed Ogbah and Yannick Ngakoue if I was making the calls, because I think they both bring a little bit of a different skill set to the table. But hey, why not go with the guy who's
You
familiar
know,
with your
you know
team?
what the problem is, Neil? They won't even sign 2 interior offensive linemen. We can't expect them to sign 2 interior defensive linemen.
You're 100% right, unfortunately. But no, man, I'm happy, and I'm happy to see Ogbah get to kind of rewrite his final chapter in Miami as well, right? Like the way he went out. First he was inactive against the Ravens. That was a huge slap in his face. We could have used him that game. I'm happy for him. I know he was donning the orange jersey today, and I'm sure that was kind of like that's become kind of gimmicky in my opinion, but new number 51, like what I mean. He looks good out
Yeah,
there, man.
yeah, he does.
I'm happy that he's back. It's a savvy signing. Again, the Shaq Barrett thing caught us all by surprise. The Dolphins pivoted, signed a good guy, familiar. I don't know if he's quite the tier player that a Shaq Barrett is, but I don't think it's a big delta by any means.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's get into this. First of all, we got like 2 minutes of highlights for the people, so they can see a little bit of what went on today. Obviously, there's Emmanuel Ogbah running out there with the orange jersey, like you said, in the
He
51.
looks in good
now
shape.
now that David Long gave up the number, he can rock the 51. So, he's good. Listen, he's gonna be good this year. I'm telling you, Emmanuel Ogbah is a man on a mission. You know what I mean? So, man, I got high hopes from. Listen, I asked. I heard. Shout out to the homie Alf. He was at training camp today. I talked to him a little bit, and he told me, he confirmed what everyone said, that Chop's looking good, and we'll talk about that as we get into the training camp stuff. But he also said Mo Kamara had a few moments where he was setting the edge pretty decently today too. I asked him specifically how were Chop and Mo, and basically confirmed that Chop had a good day, but he also said Mo had a couple incidents of shedding the edge decently. So, I mean, listen, I think that edge, I think that edge position is going to be more productive in terms of pressures and sacks than people are giving it credit for right now. Because another kid, I don't know if you heard yesterday,
Gabriel.
Neil, but Grayson Murphy had a good. Grayson Murphy had, and I've been saying I think he's going to make the team.
Yeah, he's not.
Or whatever
He's too talented to be stashed, I think. Right? Like I just don't think. I think you don't want to play that game. And he was the kind of guy that was in that round 4 or 5 range. So
yeah. And you know what? Listen, those are the tough calls. Look at how we missed out with Elijah Higgins, right? Have you looked at Elijah Higgins' stats with Arizona? He started 2 games, had 14 receptions for like 160 some odd yards.
Yeah, I did.
And a touchdown.
I remember last year when I saw his name come across the ticker and I didn't want to see what he was doing. And I was like, oh, geez. He was the one that got away. And look, if you have a conviction to draft a player, I feel like you have to find a way to keep him on the roster, And
I agree.
And that's why, look, I'm happy with the Ogbah signing. I asked myself, how much is he going to be on the field? Because I do believe in Mo Kamara. I've said this, the Mo Kamara, Chop Robinson selections have it has a lot of feel of what we've seen what the Ravens do in Baltimore, where they double down on edges, they get 2 quality players, and they get opportunities early to make plays, and they do it.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's get into Tua's contract a little bit. We got 2 clips we're gonna play. One, I'm gonna play audio from Tom Pelissero discussing the deal. Then I want to get into what Austin Jackson said today. Very interesting stuff, bro. So this is what Tom Pelissero said yesterday regarding Tua. All right.
Over to Miami. We just heard a soundbite from Mike McDaniel calling the situation with Tua in Miami fluid. And he looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there. How do you translate fluid down there?
I think Mike always kind of has that look on his face. There's a little distance there. Love Mike. He's a very unique character. He's pretty transparent on a lot of this type of stuff. And what he said, that this is fluid, is very much the way that I've understood it, which is that, from day to day, is Tua going to do 7-on-7 only? Is he going to do 11-on-11? Is he going to do nothing? They don't really know. During the spring, he missed a little bit of time. He was out there sometimes for 7-on-7. They've been trying to get a contract done. And this is not, a situation where it's, well, are the Dolphins going to pay Tua? Why aren't they paying him? That always seems to be the reaction, whether you're hearing from his teammates, from fans. They're trying. They're just not in agreement on what that number has to be. It's absolutely going to begin with a 5. It's going to be $50 million plus per year. But at a time where Trevor Lawrence just matched Joe Burrow at 55, are they going to go above that? Is it going to get done below that? You also have a situation where the same agency represents all these quarterbacks that we've been talking about. They represent Athletes First represents Tua. They represent Jordan Love. They represent Dak Prescott. Different agents on each of those deals, but teams can't collude. Agents absolutely can communicate on some of these things. And so all these situations are, at least to some degree, tied together. I would think that, in all likelihood, the next one to get done would be Jordan Love, just because it seems like things are a little bit on a better page right now. But that's not to say that something won't get done in Miami with Tua either. At some point, he's got to weigh out the best offer the Dolphins are going to make him versus the possibility of a guy with his medical history, his concussion history, playing out the last year of his rookie deal, and then in all likelihood getting franchise tagged in March anyway. I mean, this is the business time of year, even though we're coming back into training camp. I honestly, Susie, can't remember. Somebody asked me this the other day. I don't really remember quarterbacks pulling the hold in ever. The hold in is more of a recent thing over the last decade anyway, but we generally see it at other positions. Everything's different when you're talking about taking your quarterback off the field. So to the extent that you're watching guys who are not as good of a player as Tua, not as good of a player as Jordan Love, that helps the player's leverage. And as long as teams are not going to fine the player for missing time or are willing to forgive any fines if and when they get a long-term contract done, these guys can afford to wait up until the point where maybe the player feels like he's missing out on the reps.
So, I mean, two things to take away from there, bro. One, the deal, he openly admitted the deal is going to start with a 5. So, I mean, that's a positive thing, no? And then, eventually, and he's right, he's going to have to get it to a point where he weighs his injury history against what the Dolphins are offering. And, that's when we get there. So, and the other thing he said too that I found interesting was, notice how he said Jordan Love and the Packers seem to be on a better page. I don't know what he meant by that, but I thought that was interesting. He said that. So, but at least, and this goes back to Cam Wolf. We've known that they know they're going to start, that annual average has to start with a 5. It's just a matter of how high they're going to come up past 50, right?
Right, and I think they've made the decision that they want to pay him, right? So that it's back to our conversation early, like how much of a variance is really preventing you from moving forward, right? Because you got to calculate everything into the equation, right? Tua makes that franchise money, right? Like people pay to come watch him. All the ads that Tua gets, the marketing that surrounds it, right? He's polarizing. He brings a spotlight to the Dolphins. So for me, it's like you'll make that money up. Right. Mm-hmm. And sure, Jordan Love's going to get done faster because to what I said earlier, Jordan Love doesn't probably deserve the contract he's going to get. And then and the contrary to that is Tua does. And Tua's proven a lot more. He's won. I know that Jordan Love won a couple playoff games, but, at the end of the day, Tua's has accomplished a lot more in this league. Yeah. I think we're in an apples and mangoes situation. And, I do have a feeling that, man, it could get a little uglier. So I got my seatbelt on. Yeah, but I think I think Pelissero brings up really good points. The one thing I will say is he is one of the first that I've ever, heard in the national media, at least, mention to his concussions and how it plays into this, because I do think that how steep that discount is remains to be seen. But I do think the Dolphins, that's something that Tua could take in consideration if things get close to get it over the hump.
The thing is, other than the concussion when he broke his hip, because he broke his nose and he broke his hip. Remember, he broke his nose too, right? Because his helmet came off and shit. He's never really dealt with concussions other than that 1 year. People are acting like he's Trent Green, and it kind of annoys me. So let's get into what Austin Jackson said, bro. Okay, these are 2 different clips from 2 different answers. But look at what he says. He repeats himself. We got to talk about this because no one's really talking about this. And I want to bring this to the forefront here with Austin Jackson. All right. So check this out, Neal. I don't know if you've seen these. These are 2 different answers to 2 different questions, but look.
Tua contract situation. What was it like today? You didn't take any of those snaps at all.
Well, it is what it is with that. Not really supposed to talk about that, but Mike White's doing a great job. Mike White's doing a great job. I've seen him get better every single day, along with Skyler. And we love Tua. Definitely want Tua back. Whatever is happening with that, definitely want it back.
Do you think there's a time?
I don't know. I can't. I'm not really allowed to speak on that. I wish I could, but we missed Tua. But we have guys that are doing a great job. Stepping up. Mike White, Skyler, we got confidence in that. But hell yeah, we want Tua back.
Bro, he literally said, "Shit, we missed Tua." But look at, he said twice that he can't really talk about it when it comes to Tua's deal. Are the Miami Dolphins, after what Raheem Mostert said on the podium a couple days ago, bro, how the players are going to bat for him, are the Dolphins now asking players not to discuss Tua's deal at camp because they don't want it to look like everyone's unified against them, from fans to players?
Well, I don't know what the Webster's dictionary for distraction is, but this is what it is, right? Like when you are coaching players to say certain things to questions, this is a time of year where you should be installing offense, not installing your offensive lineman on how to answer not paying your quarterback, right? So, yeah, that seems very robotic in coach speak. I'm sure that there has been some level of coaching to that. And I will say Austin Jackson is a very intelligent man. Like, that's something that's well known about him. But that definitely seems like there was some direction. And hell, he said it in both of those clips that I'm not supposed to talk about that. It sounds like that the Dolphins don't. And I say the Dolphins, I mean the Dolphins organization doesn't want their players addressing the kind of the elephant in the room. But it's also, I think, kind of unfair for the organization to put that burden on its players, where they're the ones that's kind of creating this mess in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. I get the sense of they don't like how the players are talking right now. I get the sense they don't like how Raheem Mostert was pretty vocal a couple of days ago when he said that they would understand if he held out.
Yeah,
then here he is. He holds out the next day, bro, basically.
And in my style, I'll be more blunt than I am because I'm kind of dancing around it. Like as a Dolphins fan, and a guy who loves this team, I'm pretty pissed off where we are, to be honest, because I should be excited about the upcoming season. I should be wondering if Tua is going to be an MVP candidate again. We should be talking about those type of things. How good Tua looked in 11 on 11s today.
Yeah.
Instead, we're sitting here talking about contractual issues.
Still.
And literally, I don't know if there's one franchise in professional football that literally shouldn't get cute with the negotiation more than the Miami Dolphins, of what we've seen them fail,
especially with a quarterback,
with Culpepper, every draft pick they threw at this, every Trent Green they signed along the way to try to answer the bell to fill Dan Marino's shoes. And I'm not sitting here saying that Tua is the player Dan Marino was, but I will say this: when it comes to solidifying yourself as a franchise quarterback, Tua has accomplished that. When it comes to, how can you be upset with a guy that's top 10 at that position in this league? I'm at a point where it's kind of putting the cloud over me, not just the Dolphins, but like on my excitement for the football season, where this is my favorite time of year. And right now, man, I get on Twitter to see if anything's happened. I plug into people that I talk to, and I keep getting the standstill news, and like I'm expecting the leverage to shift at some point, but there's not a lot of movement right now. And because of that makes me feel like some heels are dug in here a little bit. Now, we know that can change pretty quickly, and because money answers all problems. But like, I guess my big issue, because I still think Tua is going to get the long-term deal, my big issue is the way the Dolphins are conducting business. Like, this isn't you're signing a street free agent and you're fighting over a void year that you're going to add for money. Again, this is the most important. Tyreek's the best player on this team. Tua's the most important, and there's a big difference to that. Like, life goes on for the Miami Dolphins when Tyreek leaves. Life does not go on for the Dolphins in a positive manner without a franchise quarterback. We've seen that. We will be talking about trying to get a top 5 draft pick again, just to get a guy that can be on that level. And the likelihood is we still wouldn't get that guy. So it's like I'm really really frustrated with this, man, and it like I think Tua is too committed to the people on this team to make it get ugly. But I'm also at a point where, I've always said I love the logo more than the names on the jersey. But I do side with Tua Tagovailoa in this situation where, the Dolphins have to pay if at worst max the Trevor Lawrence deal. Or just go up 1%, do something to get this done. What are you trying to prove here? What are you trying to prove? And the cap is going to go up $30 million again next year, and it's probably going to happen like that for the next few years. Like this to me is a no-brainer. This is the move you have to make. Javon Holland, sure, maybe you get that to an ugly situation where you're at a cut each other's throat negotiation. Tua, the franchise quarterback, with everything on the line this year, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball, and we haven't even got to the preseason yet.
Yeah. Knight says, Tua said, show me the money or I'll show you Mike White. Hallie D. Berry says, the more we wait, the more he's going to price himself out of Miami, and I can't seem to understand why you won't pay him. Miami has put Tua through hell. Tony says Tua should bring in Reason to negotiate his deal. Tommy Washington says, Reason, do you have any players to watch in next year's draft, or is it too early? My 2 players to watch is Clay Webb from Jacksonville State and Tate Rutledge. Yeah, I mean, we'll start talking about players during the season. Right now, training camp just started, brother. This is where our focus is. I haven't really dove into a ton of tape for next year. I've got my early watching of the quarterback class pretty much done. And yeah, so let's get into training camp observations. My whole thing is here. It's clearly evident. You watch the Giants Hard Knocks and you see the PR team basically prepping the GM before he has to go up on the podium talking about Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney, right? And their deals coming up and basically prepping them to give them like generic answers and stuff. And, it seems like they're going to mandate players, hey, we don't want to discuss Tua's deal with the media, and I don't know. Because it's hard to judge whether that's a good thing or a bad thing based on negotiations. And because we know Greer just doesn't like their business being talked about publicly. And I think this is coming down to they know the locker room supports Tua. They also, see, here's the other thing people aren't taking into account. The locker room watched them ask Christian Wilkins to show his grit as a pass rusher. He did that basically on the, hey, show us and we'll pay you. He showed them they didn't pay him. Now they're playing the same game with Tua that they did last year. They didn't want to get out ahead of the contract. They told him, hey, show us you can stay healthy for a year and show him you can produce at a high level. He leads the league in passing, stays healthy, and now they're having a problem ponying up the bag. This people don't realize how deep this is running because players are looking at each other and saying, hey, if you're not going to pay a homegrown talent that's one of your biggest defensive leaders in the last decade, or homegrown talent that's the franchise quarterback you drafted, what are you going to do with little old me? That's what other players are looking at non-important at positions that aren't as important as, and every position is important, but aren't as important as paying your franchise quarterback. Like that starts to leak over into players, and they start to doubt, hey, you told these guys these things, they did that, you didn't fulfill your end of the bargain. How am I to believe you're going to fulfill your end no matter what you tell me? You know what I mean? It's turning into like the boy that cried wolf. You know what I mean? So,
and look, and if Tua is sitting out 11 on 11s, right? Are you really getting any evaluation of your offense or your defense? Like, are you like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
that's why I said our defense is balling out, but that's nice. But show me that when Tua's on the field.
Exactly.
Not Gavin Hardison throwing you pick after pick, right? So let's get into what happened today, all right? So news, notes, and highlights from day 2. We'll go over the Miami Herald and the Sun Sentinel just because we're on a time crunch a little bit now. But Tua Tagovailoa, in the midst of contract negotiations with the team, did not participate in on-field work during Thursday's practice, stood on the sideline, listened to the coach's communication in his headset, and that was its extent of participation on day 2. So there you go, right there. ESPN has reported that no deal between the Dolphins and Tagovailoa is imminent. All right. Besides players, 6 players who are on the physically unable to perform list, several others did not practice. Jordan Poyer and Kendall Fuller, 2 projected starters, 1 inside with the team, 1 outside for practice. Neither practiced Thursday. Calais Campbell did not practice on Thursday after practicing on Wednesday. Campbell, 37, and the Dolphins traditionally limit and monitor the training camp work for older players. Jonnu Smith, who practiced on Wednesday, was not a participant on Thursday. He worked sparingly all offseason because of an undisclosed injury. Terron Armstead, whose training camp work is apparently being limited to preserve his health for the regular season, was on the practice field working in zone, but without a helmet. Javon Holland was at practice today and participating on Thursday after being sidelined for a time on Wednesday following a collision with Malik Washington. In one of the best plays on Thursday, Mike White delivered a deep throw to Alec Ingold for a 60-yard touchdown. Jalen Waddle had a nice diving catch and a 15-yard gain on a pass from White. Cam Brown sacked White in 7-on-7s. Brown was a key special teams player for the Giants. He also had a nice stop in the backfield on a left side run. On a day when Campbell was held out, Deshaun Hand and Emmanuel Ogbah were owning their side of the trenches in the first 11-11 period. Ogbah sacked White, his second sack in 2 days, and he wore the orange jersey given by coaches to the standout player from the previous day's practice. Chris Brooks fumbled a pitch from quarterback Gavin Hardison. Defensive lineman Isaiah Mack recovered it and had a decent return. Channing Tindall, trying to win a job at one of Miami's deepest positions, had a pass breakup in 11-11s. Quentin Bell set the edge very effectively and tackled Devon Achane in the backfield. Bell has had a strong start to camp. The defensive line owned the offensive line in the trench battle of the first 11-11 period. In one sequence, White had the entire defensive line in his face before he threw the ball 3 seconds after he likely would have been sacked. Undrafted Rutgers rookie center Ireland Brown delivered a high snap to Thompson. Anthony Schwartz, who faces significant odds to win a spot on the 53, helped himself with a nice kickoff return. So there you go. Anthony Schwartz is being used a little bit there. Zach Sealer had a tackle for a loss on the right side run from Raheem Moser. Rivet Craycraft beat former Bill cornerback Sierra Neal for a respectable gain on a pass from Thompson. Hardison rebounded from a poor first practice to make some nice throws, including an inside seam pass to Tyreek, who's moving as if someone hit the fast forward button while defenders were standing still. The undrafted UTEP rookie QB also delivered a 15-yard pass to Braylon Sanders in the middle of the field. White was picked off by Elijah Campbell on a pass to Durham Smythe. Ogbah was in his face with a pressure when White bootlegged on the play. Rookie left tackle Patrick Paul held Chop Robinson in an attempt to protect Thompson. I mean, that's not a surprise. Watch the film. Patrick Paul held like 60% of his reps. Jalen Ramsey laid his shoulder into tight end Tanner Connor at the conclusion of a screen pass that gained a first down. Kader Coe, who had 2 pass breakups in the final 11-11 session, the defensive player celebrated every big play they made on day 2. Tanner Connor caught a short sideline pass from White and outsprinted 2 defenders to the end zone. His speed was impressive on the play, and Hill caught a 25-yard sideline pass from Thompson. That ended practice. Ether Bonner was in great position in coverage and might have deflected the ball, but the all-pro receiver caught it nonetheless. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, Neal. That offensive line. Yesterday, they were chewed out by Butch Berry. Everyone, all the reporters saw it go down. Richmond was sure they would bounce back today after that kind of a tongue lashing. And it seems like, once again, that defensive line with no pads on is still handing them their ass. Because I don't even know if you saw, but brother, they're also giving Jack Driscoll reps at center. He botched a snap yesterday.
Yep.
Isaiah Wynn's on pup. They're not telling us who's at left guard, but we can pretty much guess it's Robert Jones or Lester Cotton probably. So your interior right now is probably Jones and Cotton, Brewer, and then with, Ireland or Jack Driscoll filling in, and then Eichenberg at center. Ouch, buddy. Ouch. Your thoughts on the offensive line not having a good start to camp?
I think without Tua back there, I would have projected this. Again, their talented's limited. Armstead's obviously a very good player. Also, Jackson's good. I think Brewer's good. Eichenberg is a disaster to me as a starting right guard in this league. And if Isaiah Wynn's not playing, the depth there is just awful. I'm not even sold on Jack Driscoll as a solid depth piece all around, to be honest. Like, I think they need 2 interior guys. I don't know what their plan is, but this is one of those things where they laughed at us for questioning them, and the joke might be on them because someone's going to go down on the offensive line. That's what history tells us.
Yeah.
and the unit's not that great at full strength,
Mhm.
what is your contingency plan? And it's just like paying Tua. I don't think they have one. And the only concern I really have about this football team really is the interior offensive line, because whether Tua gets his extension or not, he's going to be out there. That's who Tua is. He's going to be the starting quarterback of this team week one. The offensive line, though, if they don't go out and sign a quality player, Van Roten type player, Glowinski, one of those guys that we've talked about ad nauseum on this show, I don't know how they can look in the mirror and say they've put their best foot forward heading into the 2024 season. It's just Andrew Meyer, Island Brown, Lester Cottons, like those are guys that wouldn't go out and start on Alabama tomorrow, right? Like that's the reality. Like the Alabama we were talking about, collegiate players. Well, the guards Parker Brailsford and Jaden Roberts would both start on this Dolphins team right now, right? And I'm not being cute. They really legitimately would. I think that the Dolphins really need to figure something out here. I like if it's trading the draft resources for a player whose contract you can digest. I don't know what it is. I'll say this, that it looks like Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees are going to be the starting guards in Baltimore. So Ben Cleveland's a guy who's going to shake free. He played really well against us. I don't think he's a bona fide starter, but I think you could probably get him for a 5th or 6th round pick from Baltimore with an abundance of draft picks. That's a call that I would make as a low quality. I think he's an improvement to Jack Driscoll at least. But yeah, reason I'm nervous about the offensive line more than anything because we're seeing what this offense looks like without Tua, and it's kind of the irony of it is this offensive line is the reason that we could see life without Tua, right?
Yeah.
Like when we're
Yep.
playing Chris Jones and Quinnen Williams and Justin Matabuki, and we're lining up Ireland Brown, for example, and Leo Meichenberg, like they're going to be sitting there like a dog with a line with a steak in front of them. I mean, that's just going to be like so. But I think the good news that you kind of covered there is the defense. I think is going to be a way better unit. There's a swagger to them, and I think they weren't able to hit that swag with Vic Fangio. And this isn't me crapping on Vic Fangio. I just don't
Yeah.
think he was a good fit for the personnel we had. Anthony Weaver's this player's coach. You're going to see this, right? You're going to see this defense play with more swagger, like visible
Yeah.
swagger, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a bona fide see. And then Cam Brown, that guy's going to make this team.
Yeah, he is a special teams alone. I wanted to go over one more training camp report, and we're going to talk about defense heavy on this one. So let me just hop into this, and then we can go off because I do want to talk about the defense a little bit more in depth. So Dolphins rookie edge rusher Chop Robinson, the 1st-round pick for Penn State, had a breakout day on Thursday, the 2nd day of training camp practice. His performance will absorb some of the shock of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa not practicing at all. Tagovailoa, of course, is staging a hold-in, reporting and doing limited work instead of a holdout when the player doesn't report. Several veterans were granted off days, which is common for McDaniel, but it's not believed that McDaniel's inactivity was due to a veteran rest day. Robinson performance headline a strong showing for the defense overall, and specifically with the pass rush. Robinson didn't make any head-turning, jaw-dropping plays, but he made a string of good plays and was consistent against both the first team and the second team. It was a good second day for the rookie, who will likely be counted on to make a big contribution early in the season. Right tackle Austin Jackson said Robinson is explosive and good coming out of his 3-point stance. Robinson's first step was highly regarded by NFL scouts. Overall, it was a good day for the Dolphins draftees and the Dolphins defense. Emmanuel Ogbah, who returned after Shaq Barrett surprisingly retired, wore the orange jersey as the player of the day. He was a pass rushing beast late in practice Wednesday and all day Thursday. David Long, who's on the physically unable to perform list, made an appearance on the field doing rehab on the sideline. The thin collection of edge rushers going through individual drills included Ogbah, Robinson, Mo Kamara, Quentin Bell, and obviously Murphy. So Grayson Murphy. Cam Smith got a lot of work with Kendall Fuller apparently getting a veteran day of rest. White was sharp in 7-on-7s. He obviously took to the repetitions that Tagovailoa would have taken. White's day was highlighted by a 60-yard touchdown pass to Alec Ingold. Patrick Paul showed good awareness in 11-11 drills and fired off the ball aggressively. Paul had a low-key but effective day on Wednesday. He was better on Thursday. Taron Armstead and edge rushers Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb were seen on the practice field but didn't participate. Jordan Poyer didn't work out. Calais Campbell had a veteran rest day. Jonnu Smith had a veteran rest day. Tyndall broke up a pass by Thompson. He needs to have an active training camp to earn playing time. Quentin Bell set the edge and made a nice stop on Achane. Bell also shot the gap and had a stop on Raheem Mostert along with Zach Sealer. Bell has had a decent showing in the two practices. Keon Smith struggled in times at 11-11, but it's tough for linemen when they're not in full pads and can't use their full physicality. Durham Smythe did a nice job blocking Chop Robinson on one pass play. Robinson, this is a good thing, also set the edge nicely on a run play in 11-11s. Ogbah had a sack of White on 11-11s. Ogbah has been encouraging the two practices. Paul and Robinson had head-to-head standoff on one-on-one on one 11-11 play that resulted in a completed pass from Thompson to Craycraft. Robinson had a nice pass rush against Paul late in practice, applying pressure to Thompson in the backfield. Hardison had a nice bounce-back day that included nice completions to Tyreek Hill. Hardison showed much better awareness Thursday and appeared more relaxed than he did Wednesday, his first ever practice. In training camp, Elijah Campbell had a nice interception of White with Ogbah applying pressure. Liam Eichenberg had a decent showing in his one-on-one matchups with Seiler. There's a chance Eichenberg is the start of the season. I mean, we pretty much know that. Mark Perry broke up a pass late in practice. Safeties led by Javon Hall and Elijah Campbell had a decent showing Thursday. Robinson beat Austin Jackson, applied pressure on White late in 11-11s. The result of the play was a pass broken up by Kader Kohu. Stock up, Robinson, the rookie first-round pick, had success in one-on-ones against Jackson and Paul. It was a strong showing, especially as practice got later after a low-profile opening day. And stock down, Chris Brooks. The second-year player lost a fumble on a pitch and dropped a wide-open pass. So let's talk about this. Chop Robinson has a bit of a breakout day, Neal. And, I mean, with a team looking for a lot of help at edge right now, when I hear he's doing things that weren't his strength on film, and that's setting the edge, starting to get some positive thing. I know Anthony Weaver took him to the side yesterday and was talking to him and teaching him some technique. Man, I'm excited for Chop's growth under Anthony Weaver, Neal. And it's day 2, the pads aren't on, but I like the fact he's already starting to make noise. And I know, Neal, you said if the opportunities are there for him, you think he can be a rookie defensive player of the year type. And I've been on record saying I think you could see double-digit sacks if he gets the opportunities. I mean, that's got to be one of the big positives coming away from today, no? You're muted in case you didn't know, brother. You there?
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm sorry. I think I lost you for a second.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I was going to say, look, this goes back to me all the way back to when we got Anthony Weaver as our defensive coordinator, man. And you're giving this guy one of the most toolsy edge rushers that you can get, right? A guy with an elite first step. And when we were in the defensive coordinator search, I stressed Anthony Weaver because I thought that he would make the Dolphins better in the trenches. I think he would get the maximum out of the edge and the defensive line. And I think we're going to see that with Chop. This doesn't surprise me. This guy's got the feeling of a guy who's going to be a better NFL player than he was collegiate. And
I agree.
I think Jaden Daniels wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I think Chop's going to win the Defensive Rookie of the Year. And I'll double down even further. Like a lot of people think I'm a Bradley Chubb hater. I like Bradley Chubb. I think he's a good football player. But I think Chop Robinson is going to be the reason that we cut him after this year because
I agree.
I think it's going to be Chop Robinson and Jalen Phillips with Mo Kamara as the third going forward.
And Jalen Phillips better hope Mo don't catch fire because Mo's got 2 years basically to show them that you don't need to pay Jalen Phillips.
Right, and then they have Grayson Murphy, and then look, let's say Emmanuel Ogbah has a decent season. There's no telling that they could bring him back for a team-friendly deal as well. I think Chop Robinson is going to be the guy on the defensive side of the ball that people were like, oh my God, why didn't we see this coming? I won't say his name. I had a guy who covers the 49ers send at me a private message today, and he was like, there's really people that exist that don't think Chop Robinson's going to be an all-pro type of player. Couldn't be me. And I thought that was an awesome message to get. I'm a big fan of Chop. I think the sky is up for him. It's glad to hear Ogbah, really making such an impact early, and coming back. Some of the positive I heard, the Patrick Paul stuff. I'm a big believer if they truly let Patrick Paul practice with this team and red shirt kind of behind Teron Armstead, and he can clean up his hands, that he could be a really good left tackle. So that's intriguing. And one thing I'll say is, like, I'm not one of the guys. I know there's a big portion of the Dolphins fan base that, like, are on this Chris Brooks bandwagon. Not me, man. He fumbled in that game against Baltimore as soon as he touched the ball. There's just too much talent at the running back position on this team. And then one guy that I think is going to make himself really hard to cut, and depending on who's on the pup, is Quentin Bell, man.
He's showing up, eh?
Yeah, this is why you have training camp in the preseason. If this guy goes, like, he plays with his hair on fire, this guy is exactly what you want to watch. A guy that's going to make life hell for everybody else who thinks they're just going to coast to a roster spot. And I'm not saying he's definitely going to make the team. I think he, at worst, can be on the practice squad. But the Dolphins are going to have a hard time giving that dude a pink slip. He just plays the game so hard, man. Like, every time I hear someone talk about the Dolphins in the preseason training camp, the mini camps, I keep hearing about Quentin Bell, and it's consistent. So I think
on the defensive side today, Kader Kohu and Elijah Campbell both apparently had really strong days too today.
Yeah, after I kicked Kader off the team on Sunday night, so good to see him tell me to F off there. So good.
Yeah, really, eh? You got any final thoughts, brother? I mean, just to add to this, I mean, when you talk about Adam Beasley said that, Kader Kohu made the most of his enhanced role with Fuller out today. He said, Ogbah has been excellent, while penetration by Chop and Mo caused multiple negative plays today. He's like we just talked about, said Chris Brooks, really rough day for him and really rough 2 days for him. And he said the Dolphins offensive line will be concerned until they prove otherwise. He said Armstead nor Isaiah Wynn are practicing, but that doesn't excuse the pressure and the penetration they were allowing on run plays. So it's pretty much, it's pretty much widely being regarded that this offensive line is not having a great start, and the pads aren't even on yet. And I get you can use that physicality, but dude, I mean, when the pads come on, the defense can be more physical too.
Yeah. The offensive line, I think that's going to be what we're talking about after a lot of games, win, lose, or draw. I think the offensive line is going to be the topic of conversation for most of the year. The one thing I'll say is that, we talk about how talented this Dolphins roster is. And there's a lot of people that always say, oh, you're wrong, fire Chris Grier. Well, there's a lot of lists out there. There's executive list. The list I care about most is what other players say about their peers, because they're playing up and lining up against them. Just in the last 24 hours on that NFL Top 100 list, I think there's been like 6 or 7 Dolphins literally on that list. And we haven't even got to Tua or Tyreek or Ramsey yet. Like, this Dolphins roster, and I think the reason you and I get frustrated with the inactivity to go sign an interior offensive line is I truly think that this Dolphins team can contend. And I would hate to see the season not get to its heights from not learning from past mistakes. And that's the Russian roulette that I see the front office playing right now. If you and I can sit here and see this with our naked eye, how can the players, the people that are in charge of the Dolphins personnel, not see the limitations that this offensive line, because all this elite offensive production we've seen the Dolphins has been with really poor offensive line. Let's not mask it. Like, imagine if this team had a above average offensive line, just how high the heights the offense could do. Because a lot of people will say the offense falters against good teams. Well, those good teams are typically the ones that beat the shit out of us in the trenches, like the Ravens, the Chiefs. And a lot of it comes down to the offensive line play. Like, I truly think that this is – I hope that the Dolphins, I don't know what they can do to save it this season. They, go sign some veterans. But I do hope that when they have 9 draft picks next year, that they don't ignore. You said Clay Webb, right? Jacksonville State. Yeah. You said Tate Ratledge. There's about 8 guys that are in that pedigree of interior offensive linemen. There's the Alabama guys. Tyler Booker's another name. Go get me one of those bona fide guys that I can feel good about being a starting guard for years. You know what I mean? It's just frustrating, because I truly believe the offensive line is what holds this team back. And I think they just got to they constantly have to make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what? And if they just addressed it with adding one quality interior guy at guard, I wouldn't feel so bad about having a Liam Eichenberg. But it's just that, you just threw minimal resources at the position. And if Tua's not there, man, this offensive line is going to get eat up all preseason because the Dolphins' defensive line is just way better than people think. So that's just my 2 cents, man. It's, I hope by the time we talk next week that the quarterback's paid. I'm not holding my breath about it, but, there are some positives to see. The young players here can play. The roster is good. I'm not really worried about all these veterans that are missing practice. Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter to me as long as they're there at the facility. But let's get the quarterback there, man, so that we can get a fair evaluation of the receivers and that, we actually challenge this defense in the preseason here.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Go get us a Tyler Booker, a Donovan Jackson, a Luke Kandra, someone, bro, or you want to be real bold, go get us a Will Campbell or Emory Jones and kick them inside and make them battle with Patrick Paul. You know what I mean?
Right.
I agree 110%. I agree 110%. Listen, guys, smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Neal will be back Sunday for Dolphins After Dark. There will also be training camp on Sunday too. So, man, as training camp comes, we will give you more coverage. Appreciate each and every one of y'all for coming through. We had over 800 join us between X and YouTube today. Well over 300 on YouTube as well. So thank you. Smash that like button on your way out. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see y'all on the next one. And as always, fins up all day, every day. Take it easy, everyone.